The next type of graph would be a line graph. And remember, line graphs are all about showing changes over time. Here's our experiment from the tables video again, where we grew different plants in different amounts of shade. We grew 3 plants in full sun and averaged their heights. And then we grew 3 plants in 50% shade and found their average heights. And those were measured each week. So as soon as you have time involved, you want to be thinking, all right, it's probably a line graph, which is best going to show that change over time. So in this case, we could try highlighting the entire table and adding it into a line graph. So if we then do insert and then choose line graph, it's going to be very cluttered because it's adding in every single trial across that time. So you need to be specific and tell Excel exactly which data we want to include. And often the headings will confuse the program. So we know that time is going to be our x-axis. We want to have 0 to 5 weeks as our x-axis. So we'll highlight just the data 0 to 5. And then when you have trials and a line graph, you really only want to show the average. There's no point showing 3 different lines when you can average them out. So we'll hold down Control and highlight the average for full sun. Hold down Control, averages for 50% shade, and then hold down Control for the control test. And now we can go and insert a line graph. You can choose one without dots or with dots. Normally the convention is you don't need to show the actual data points. All right. So line graphs normally need a bit more editing, mainly because Excel doesn't know what the horizontal axis is. We have to tell it that this column here is the horizontal axis on our graph. So we're going to go into the graph, right click it and do select data. And now a line graph has the horizontal axis here. So if we click edit, it gives us a range of numbers that are going to be put onto the x-axis. So we're going to highlight the time from 0 to 5 and then do OK. And now it's got how many different data series, how many different lines does it want us to draw? Well, series 1, that was the time in weeks. So it thought that was one of our sets of results. So we don't actually need series 1. And then series 2 is going to be the full sun. Series 3 is the 50% shade, and series 4 will be the control. So we only want to show those last 3 series. And if we click OK now, that's looking much more accurate. So we have our 0 to 5 weeks. We've got our height of the plants. The full sun plants are the orange and they grew more quickly compared to the green, which was 50% shade. And the control plants initially grew more quickly than the shade, than the 50% shade, but then they plateaued because they have no light for photosynthesis. All right, now it's all about formatting. So we will need to have a legend. Let's delete it for now though, because we want to have our axis title down there. Again, we don't need to have a chart title. We're going to write a caption above it. We also don't need horizontal lines, but we need to add in our axis lines and tick marks. So let's add in our axis titles, horizontal and vertical. Let's right click the format axis. We'll go to the paint bucket and make sure the line is colored black. Then we'll go back to the axis options and make sure our tick marks are visible on the outside. Again, we're counting in 5, so there's no need for minor tick marks here. Now we'll right click the horizontal axis and change our line to black and add our tick marks on the outside. Okay, one thing that Excel also does, which isn't normally how you want to draw your line graphs, is it puts the tick marks in between each number. But our set of axes should really start with 0, 0 here. So what you do is you right click on Format Axis, and we want the axis position to be on the tick marks. Now we're starting at 0, and our ticks are on the actual numbers. All right. So our axis title here, we have time in weeks. The vertical axis was measuring height of the plants in centimeters. We would like to add in our legend again. So we'll go back to add an element. We're going to add a legend, and you can choose where it appears. Normally the right-hand side is easiest to read. And it doesn't recognize which series is which. So what we can do is go back to the format data, select data. We can go back to our 3 different series and we can edit them and add the name of the series. So the first one was full sun. Okay. The second series, edit, is 50% shade. And the final one is a control test. All right, so there's a nice color coordinated, simple to read line graph with axes labeled and a nice legend. And we'll need to add our caption at the top when we put it into our report. Figure 1. And there we go.